Happy New Year! And also happy waiting one more week for us to come back. Until then, we're going to replay this episode from a very strange time around this time 2 years ago. That's weird. When we recorded an episode about 90s action films and cleaning digital house in the new year. We thought it might be a kind of interesting cosmic moment to think back on where we were then. And just in a few short days, we'll be back to talk about where we are now and where we're headed in future wild prognostications. Okay, buckle up. Have a listen. Bye.
Woo!
Whoa!
Wow!
Yo!
Pow!
Zap!
Zoom!
Chancery.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
That pow is what it Joey sounds like.
And that Zap Chancery font pun is what Aaron sounds like.
And this
is
what
Windows 95? No. Okay, I'm
an
sorry.
executive producer and Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. I'm regaining my
JCVD.
composure after that font joke. Aaron,
sorry.
my gosh, you got me.
JCVD is those initials of Jean-Claude Van Damme are in your initials. So Jessica Vander. JCVD.
Yeah, it's right.
You're basically
That's
the
it.
same.
That's it.
Is it?
You're basically the muscles from Brussels with a cocaine problem.
Oh
That
no!
turned so fast.
I
That went from cool to
don't know.
cringe.
I just
real
missed
quick.
you so much. We
true.
were on a bit of a hiatus for many reasons in December, and I just missed you all.
Yeah, we missed you too. We did our first show, I think, in Critical Nonsense history without you, which was
Ugh.
weird.
Yeah,
I felt weird.
it was a nightmare.
Yeah, but it was fun hanging out with Jess.
Thanks.
I think we only had like one official episode in December. There was a bit of an illness. There was weird days falling, and then vacation, and so
And we reviewed our prognostications. Never forget, we will be coming up with our newest ones for 2020 soon.
Yes.
we're about to get prognostic.
Wow, wow. Mr. Prognostic. Sorry.
Boom, boom, boom.
Wait.
The only housekeeping I would say is it's 2020. Give us a rate and review if you have a moment. It's nice. We appreciate it.
We do.
Tell a friend.
Tell your mom.
Tell your mom.
Tell your cousins.
Take your mama out all night.
Yeah. Oh, Scissor Sisters.
Let the good times all roll out.
God, that's a good song.
Dancing on the town. And then on the way home, listen to Critical Nonsense. Because somehow we have to tie it back in.
Yeah,
well done.
yeah.
Well done. Yes.
So that's it.
That's it. So I guess we got to get into some hot topics, and I've got some thoughts to share.
Hot topics. Oh my gosh, so cute. 90s pun continues.
Yeah.
Spencer's gifts. Let's talk about Spencer's gifts.
I really will, but never walk to the back of the store. You're never allowed to be there.
I saw my old lava lamp at my parents' house when I was home.
Oh man, I had what color was yours? Because I had one too.
It was orange, I believe, was
Yeah,
the
that makes
lava.
Okay.
And,
Oh,
but
Right.
it was like a silver container that looked vaguely
Ooh.
like had like a spaceshipy type.
Got it. So
cap
like a
on it.
Nickelodeon
Yeah,
style.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lava
one might say you
explosion.
might as well be walking on the sun.
Yeah.
But no, I had a black and blue one for everyone that cared. Thanks. So over the
And I
holiday,
had none.
oh no,
It's okay.
Loser.
lavaless.
But did you have one of those electrical balls?
Yes. Oh, the little
plasma
ones.
spheres.
Oh my god, my whole
The
room
ones
was
that
that kind of
span with the colors on the walls, or am I thinking of something
no,
else?
but I loved those too. This is the one that had like the little tendrils that come out of the middle, and you can touch it with
like
your
a
fingers, and they
Tesla
jump to
coil.
them. Yeah, like in a glass
Oh,
globe.
wow. Science. Yeah, those are cool. I was instead thinking about like the very cheap floor model of the disco ball that you could earn by selling a bunch of those magazines through your middle school.
Yes, those are not fit. That's awesome.
Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead, Aaron.
No, it's fair. But this all takes us back to some stretches near or far of an auspicious decade, the 1990s.
The 1990s.
There were at least teens of them. I guess there weren't. But over the holiday stretch, my husband, my dog, and I just curled up on the couch and did what Power's family tradition, which is
Pamela
to
Anderson.
yeah, all very 90s, which is to binge watch 90s action movies. And we did. Like I definitely was taking calls while pausing movies that were playing in the background. I can work and have movies going on in the background. telling people like, hold on, wait, passenger 57 is about to start. We're about
Get
to
down.
Get down.
Get down again.
We had a couple. We literally hit everyone. We hit Arnold with True Lies. We hit JVCD. Actually, no, we didn't get Van Damme because we skipped over. He's a little bit too early with Bloodsport and stuff like that. But we did do Sylvester Stallone.
Lionheart, though?
Daylight. I hate Lionheart. Boo Lionheart. No, I'm lying. I like Lionheart.
I don't think I've seen a single one of these movies.
They're bad. They're not.
Street Fighter?
Street Fighter is an objectively terrible movie. Like, I want to like it. You know me well enough to know that I want to stand for it, but I
know
can't.
that's an arcade game, right?
Yes, tis. And they made it an action film with Kylie Minogue
And Raul Julia.
and Raul
Wow.
Julia as M. Bison, which like the big boss. And they gave no one their powers in that game. It was tacky. That's why Mortal Kombat is one of the best. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. After watching all these 90s movies, it was a rock'em sock'em ride through misogyny, racism, casual homophobia, and everything else that just makes everything in ourselves, I think, today cringe. And I really had to sit down and challenge myself and ask, what debt do we owe to the 90s action film?
I believe the answer is, who is Wesley Snipes?
We have a winner. Ding, ding, ding. Come on down. Bum, bum, ba-da.
I mean, it's a really big question.
I
right?
don't like small questions, Joey. I like to make it complex for 2020.
Because I think the 90s was so potent in some of these ideas that you're talking about, where budgets were getting bigger. It was such an auspicious a time of wealth and success in America that the sort of capital that was funneling into these Hollywood films was incredible, but we were still sort of stuck in this time where it was like all, it was Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme, like all of these. Steven Seagal, I guess,
Yes.
had his moment technically.
Absolutely. Under Siege.
And it sort of pronounced a lot of these issues that we had maybe swept under the rug or were ignoring in, great American fashion. And so maybe there's part of it that it brought it to life. I mean, it did give us Bad Boys. It gave us Will Smith.
Oh, wow, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron, I guess, why did you even want to watch these movies today, right? Like, obviously it can't be all bad because you're still watching them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think there's certainly just a personal element of nostalgia. Like, that's kind of what we did growing up. As my cousins would come to town, we'd like curl up in the basement. We have this big box of VHS tapes, and they were all 90s action movies. It was Speed. Oh my God, we always watched Speed. We would watch it again and again and again just to watch the main moments. It's a long movie. It's very good. When I turn back to them, though, aside from nostalgia, there's like this. To be honest, it makes me feel a little bit like smarter and embarrassed at the same time. Where it's like I can see everything that is so wrong with them, and yet I still genuinely enjoy the spectacle, the explosions, the practical effects, like the idea that at that time you could shut down a huge street in San Francisco for The Rock and actually like drive a Ferrari down like Lombard Street. It wasn't Lombard Street, but A Street, and blow up like a trolley 80 feet in the air and actually do that. Like, there's something cool that's always been really inspiring.
Can I potentially flip this on its head with a question that I don't know the answer, but like as you're talking about it, are action movies actually the most progressive mainstream genre of film?
Girl, nah.
No. I mean, think about come up with a person of color or woman who was the main actor in a drama, in a comedy, in a thriller, even in the 90s. And I can't, and not to say that it doesn't exist, but it certainly, but you can think about Sigourney Weaver, you can think about Jackie Chan, you can think about Will Smith. I think potentially actually the action, because of sort of the nature of what you're looking for, is excitement, explosions, bigness there. If it's checking those boxes, arguably it's allowing, it gave permission potentially to put underrepresented faces in mainstream cinema. I mean, I think Jackie Chan, Will Smith, and Sigourney Weaver, just as like 3 examples, were, you know, in some of the biggest films of the 90s in terms of, I mean, Independence Day was enormous. Bad Boys was enormous. I mean, Will Smith was sort of untouchable. Jackie Chan was kind of one of the action stars of the 90s, and he was just cranking out, you know, Rumble in the Bronx was like this low budget one.
I love Rumble in the Bronx.
But then he was doing Rush Hour, which was him and
Chris Tucker.
Like, is it possible that action films, while presenting some of these misogynist, racist messages that you're talking about, also were some of the first films to push forward in representation compared to other genres?
I mean, there's an interesting entanglement of overall progressivism versus just representation and tokenism. Like, there's a lot of just marketing dollar spend that just was like, yep, we need to get a black guy in there. And you see that so much in the 90s in these movies with what characters, and I'll stick with black folks in particular because that's top of mind for many reasons. But the characters that black people were allowed to play were almost universally military figures or cops. Like, they were always on some, like, they were either on that side of the law or they were criminals. And that's like, there just aren't many other characters in action films in the 90s that embodied anything else. And then with women too, like I'll take True Lies, for example, because True Lies, ooh, that movie. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you haven't seen it, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger as a spy whose unsuspecting wife of Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't know this at all and thinks that he's a well-meaning, like, paper salesman. And when she finds out that he's this international hitman, she eventually, well, I won't ruin the movie. If you haven't seen it, you know, it's only like 25 years old. Yeah. Go check it out and have a good time. But the treatment, the discussion from Tom Arnold, who's a side character in the film, about women and the way that he talks jokingly about his relationship with his ex-wives and women in general is like disgusting.
Yeah.
And even the way that probably most egregious is the way they treat Jamie Lee Curtis's character in the movie, where there's this whole sequence that is really, really funny where Jamie Lee Curtis is super uptight, thinks that Arnold is I can't even explain it. She does like a sexy stripper dance in a bedroom. And it is weird because you can tell that, like, the humor stopped after like 1 minute and the sequence goes on for like 8.
Yeah, she's supposed to be like a honeypot spy, right?
Yes. And like, there are so many other examples of this. And when you see, so there's like this whole swath of these 90s action movies that like are really telling pretty obvious, like, broken moral stories that we would call them obvious now about how we should treat other people. And then you have a bridge period in the early 2000s with action films that have more character development or world building. That's like your Lord of the Rings world or Matrix, where it's content that's already been written, but it's bigger and whatnot. And then you get to the other side, which we're still in now, which is the comic book blockbuster. Like, we haven't gotten, it's like the comic book blockbuster is absolutely the younger sibling of the 90s action film. It takes the character development that people wanted from a longer engagement with their stories, the special effects and spectacle that 90s action movies primed audiences to expect in the cinema, and then makes the morals reflect even more overtly on the audiences that are viewing them today.
Yeah, or just rewriting the old story so that it fits.
Actually, yeah, that's it. It's like taking aim at, like, we know that we're not supposed to do this because that's the way it was done before, so we're purposefully doing it differently.
I mean, it does bring an interesting point to what you brought up, though, Joey, about, like, they may have been on to something, except for the fact that it was made a long time ago. Like
I think
30 years ago.
Yeah, like they certainly did not get 100% of things right. Like no, I mean, almost any movie you go back and watch from the 90s at this point is
True.
I mean, even television, right? You go back and you're like, oh, that was okay then.
Yeah. Television, I would say, is worse. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
There are, like some movies make fewer of those mistakes. I was watching The Jackal again recently.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Bruce Willis,
Yes.
Richard Gere, and it didn't make as many of those sort of like social missteps of the way that we sort of look at social issues today as other movies have, like True Lies or some of these ones. But it still had, a lot of issues within the movie. But I think, the idea of at least giving roles to people at least feels like a start to something.
And you know what that makes me think of is like, okay, so maybe the comparative representation in like the action film genre was a little bit above, and maybe even significantly above average. I'm not well versed enough to say this, but what I do think is super interesting is that now in this like final bridge state that you were saying that we're in now, Aaron, of like all these like comic book revisions, I'm thinking about though how like, what if I don't want to see Wonder Woman who has superpowers, and what if I just want to see a kick butt, strong woman beating up on some people and having some trucks blow up?
Yeah. And
like, where are those movies?
I will agree with you that we don't have enough of them, but they are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I also owe, or I think we owe a debt to Angelina Jolie. So I was watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Or Sigourney Weaver.
You're right. You're right. Let's go back to Ripley. So when you look at Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron, it came out a couple of years ago, and it is Charlize Theron as Jason Bourne. Like that's kind of the way they marketed it.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what you're describing, Jess. It's like this badass woman who is a spy who is just kicking ass and blowing things up.
Yeah.
And there have been a couple others that sort of tap dance around it. There was like, it's called like Aces Wild. Alicia Keys was in it. I don't think that's the name. It's something.
No,
about,
I think that was a film, and whether or not it's the same one. Aces Wild was one.
Yeah, and like
I think it had Gerard Butler in it as well.
That's ringing a bell. I feel like there aren't as many as there could be, but even like there's a movie that just came out about 4 women whose husbands were killed in the line of duty. Widows, yes. And that has an element of it.
It wasn't
too.
the line of duty. They were killed in like a robbery, weren't they?
Line of duty, robbery,
You know, we all have different duties.
Exactly.
Do your duty.
But I think that we need more, right? Like at least when we take a look at the 90s, we can, it's almost in such like simple primary color relief that we can see everything that's wrong, and we can create content that attacks it.
Well, the moral stories were similar too, because we did not have the fracturing of positions, media, messages, all of that we have today. And so, even what you're bringing up of like, either being the bad guy or the cop or military, that was basically the only set of roles in a lot of those action movies. You were either a cop or military or
terrorist. And that's I had to bring it up because we're talking about representation issues in the 90s.
Right.
Always a terrorist, always Middle Eastern. Yep. And it hasn't gotten much better.
Well, I was going to bring up the fact that they were highly jingoistic. It was arguably not, I don't think literally, although, you never know what actually happened, but it was largely like pro-military, pro-police. I heard Malcolm Gladwell talk recently, and I know that may like generate a cringe for some people, but he was talking about the Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern dynamic of like a Western is there is no law, and this person is sort of imposing their moral values, where an Eastern is like there is law and the law like implements for good, basically. And most of those films were in that dynamic an Eastern, in that like the law is like a good person and the system works and ultimately the bad guys are caught, right? Like in True Lies, he's in the military and he's a spy and he has values and he like beats the terrorists. I mean, ultimately.
Air Force One.
Yeah.
It is the perfect example. The president of the United States is not like, there are moments in that film, Branch and I are like slapping each other at home, like line of succession. If he is incapacitated, Glenn Close is the president. Can we watch that movie?
Yeah.
Please. But like this idea that like Harrison Ford as the president then embodies like the state, the military, and like homegrown American values all in one to fight terrorists on a plane. Like everything about that is exactly what you're saying. And most of Michael Bay's movies, I mean, he wasn't Area 50, blah, 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 blah. Air Force One. I was thinking Passenger 57 at the same time. I'm sorry. Michael Bay's movies almost always have that.
Yeah.
They always have this string of patriotism of like, the law is, the system works and we will win. And
just to close, as you're talking about, I mean, Will Smith as an example of someone who was born out of the 90s and wound up getting his other roles and things like that is sort of an interesting dynamic too, right? Like Good, Bad, or Other, The Pursuit of Happiness, or what was
7
it?
pounds?
7. Yeah, was it 7 pounds, 7 grams, 7 ounces?
Something. 7 things.
7 and a weight measurement.
Yes.
You know, films like that were deeper and kind of showing other sides of him.
Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks, Will Smith. He's getting a special thanks at the end of it.
I watched Hitch
definitely.
yesterday.
One of my top films. No,
Really?
What?
I really enjoyed the movie. The monologues are just like
Guys,
a Pinterest orgy.
this riles me up.
Oh, we riled.
Laugh like nobody's watching. Like it is like these like cliches in his monologues
There's
about
so
love that are
many.
just so cloyingly Pollyannish.
And
it's like
that's why it's amazing.
You know what? I support you.
Okay, great.
hello,
Bonjour.
welcome
Thank you.
from the ukulele break.
Yo, ukes.
So it's 2020.
What?
Everyone is just walking around doing Instagram posts for the likes about their resolutions.
Or the recap of the year month by month
Oh,
in
that
the
is
Insta
awesome.
Is that a
story.
thing?
Yeah.
Have you seen?
I haven't. You're
like, it's been such a crazy year. And then for every month, you post one emblematic photo of a trip that you took or a friend that you saw. And then it sort of streams together in this beautiful collection.
That's so
It
nice.
sounds terrible.
I hate it.
Wait, why?
It sounds nice. I hate it.
Yeah, basically.
I outside of the reflection period, I think what's interesting is that we are at the end of a year, at the end of a decade. I think the reason why that's showing up and why Wrapped got all this extra attention is because it is sort of like an additional arbitrary demarcation of one decade being complete, looking forward. It's an election. I mean, there's just so much of this opportunity to reflect. And amidst all of this, I saw someone post, it might have been Alex Anderson or someone posted something. He just works here. About it's an old journal, MIT journal, around the impact that your Twitter following can have on your ideas, your sort of like professional capacity to generate new ideas, which was sort of an interesting prospect. And so when I read the article, it basically boiled down to they were able to objectively measure the quality of people's ideas and then look at their Twitter following at a number of different companies, and people who had more diverse, what they called less compact networks, where the people in their networks are following each other. It's sort of a closed loop. Had more compelling ideas.
What were the ideas about? Like,
So it
how
was-
would you objectively measure a good idea?
So it was measured by other people in the company with people's names removed. So it was sort of voted on democratically. Like, is this
Is this a good idea?
a good idea from people? The company that they highlight, although they worked at 5 companies, they only talk about one, is a company called EMC in Massachusetts, which is like a big, I remember seeing some people's dads had EMC like polos or something from New Hampshire, that it deals in like tech and computer memory. It's like a big IT company of some sort. But the people at that company like evaluated these ideas as part of like some major idea gathering exercise. They removed everyone's names and voted on it, and then looked at the Twitter following of these different people, and there was a strong positive correlation between having a diverse set of people you follow on Twitter to the caliber of your ideas. And the thinking is ultimately that you're being exposed to a larger variety of thinking, more ideas yourself, because it's not sort of the regurgitation of the same things in a closed network. And so you can just be better at your job. If you're like going to spend time on social media, you can evaluate it. And that's sort of where it brought me, was to this question of, as we start to reflect, how many episodes have we talked about in the last year around people's digital behavior? How many articles do we see? My prognostication from last year about, Facebook facing backlash, and we're going through this period, and it seems like the right time to sort of evaluate our digital behavior and ask ourselves the question of how can we sort of clean digital house in the new decade and make a positive impact on our lives.
I have a pretty strong answer to this, which is not going to be surprising to anybody. Just don't go on social media.
Wow. It's
Don't
the
use it.
Yeah.
homesteading of internet behavior. Just live in your own little
That's it.
What counts
something
anymore?
Social media versus just digital content.
That's not like
It's a good question.
it's not like a rhetorical trap. I'm actually sort of like,
Yeah.
what
Like,
qualifies?
Is text social media, like group chats?
Exactly. Is Reddit social media? Right,
Yeah.
like you use Reddit,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
a good
not the
point.
same as Facebook.
Or Instagram.
No, I would not call Reddit social media because it is more a library with many visitors and no membership fee.
Which is totally evidenced by the quality of
But there's no
posts.
membership fee for Facebook.
All of your data and stuff, but
But
like
you think Reddit's not selling your data?
No, wow, so much sass. But I do, okay. But I think it's more about the way, like if I had to come up with an analogy, I would think of Facebook or Twitter more akin to a newspaper and Reddit more akin to a library than I would the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that, at least for me, is sort of my indicator of the social medias. Although I want to go back to the original genesis of this conversational subject, because I feel like the first thing that I was thinking of when you brought it up was like, how do we know that it's actually the social medias themselves that are making or breaking our ideas, our potential for diverse thought? Or is it just like the people who already are more inclined to surround themselves with diverse thought are the types of people who follow more people on Twitter? You know what I mean?
Also, those people being the ones who maybe are more willing to engage meaningfully with those diverse.
Yeah. Like, how do we know? I don't know if I want to put blame on or give laud to Twitter for doing that. When, like, I don't know if it's Twitter's doing.
I don't think they're saying that it was Twitter, but I think the idea, or the question, I guess, that what you're saying raises for me is whether any of this is so static, right? The idea of like, maybe some people do have a predisposition for those things naturally, right? Higher on open-mindedness measures,
Right.
per Jonathan Haidt, like those types of ideas, or like big 5 personality traits, like higher openness.
Yep.
But Twitter is sort of an interesting example where you could go in and choose to adjust your behavior there in like very tangible ways that is sort of low lift. Like if you live, like we've talked about this before, I grew up in New Hampshire. It is not a very diverse state. And so even if I had stayed in New Hampshire, my opportunity for exposure to those ideas, even if I was open-minded, would be smaller than living in New York. And so that idea, when I used Twitter at like the very beginning, I joined in like 2007 or 8, something like that. Used it for a while and then stopped. And I was using Facebook maybe. And after the election, I stopped using Facebook like cold turkey. I was like, this is toxic. I went through, so much trying to have conversations with people about politics in 2016. I was like, I gotta leave. And when I came back to Twitter, I went through this exercise a little bit because of some things I read, not in sort of like a moral fortitude type of position. I was just like, I want to expose myself to new things. And if I'm going to come back and start reading things here, I should be thoughtful about it. And so I culled my list and then I chose to follow more diverse people. I have queer voices that I follow. I have, ethnically diverse voices that I follow, different subjects, different topics, and even like some people that I'm not crazy about, but are smart and respected. And so I kind of leave them around. And I felt some positive impact in my own sort of variety of exposure, like anecdotally myself.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what that speaks to is like the other option for what Aaron, I feel like you're describing, of this desire to purge or like get rid of the bad and just like keep it away, like don't do. And instead, it sounds like, Joey, what you're suggesting is like the Marie Kondo equivalent of dealing with all of this digital mess. If you're trying to like take that on in the new year and do something about it, is not necessarily to shut off things, but instead be more, almost cast a wider net or be more mindful about those choices and still keep the toggle on, still keep the doors open.
And it's what, I see a lot of people on Facebook do, where they leave Facebook as a reset. And they actually like they just lose everything. They clear their friend lists. They've been a part of these networks for so long that trying to go through one by one and decide like, are you in or are you out, is just too arduous an exercise. And they say, nah, I'm just going to clear it all out and start fresh. And I did that with Twitter. I did clear everything out and then started following parties that I thought would be interesting and would inspire me. But I am way too deep into the Reddit hole. It's like Reddit and Feedly rule my time. I can't give it to Instagram and Twitter. I can't. And it's the same experience, by the way. I feel like I almost get the same stimulation and whatnot from sources and browse and get stuck in rabbit holes in that way. And I don't need it to be from individuals,
right?
Like on Twitter and stuff. But anyway, I think this idea of actively resetting rather than trying to be a like meticulous curator might be a way that people can clean house in 2020 effectively. Because again, it's that feeling of like back in the day when you used to like, clear your phone of all of your contacts rather than just constantly being uploaded. I used to love losing certain numbers because it kept my list smaller.
Yeah.
Like there are only 3 people who are going to text me and I'm not going to know who they are. So it's like, I can add that in. I don't need this extra weight.
But I guess there's a trap of that I feel like I was hearing Joey mention, which is like the holy sock problem. And I'm inventing that right now.
I love it.
I like it. The paradox.
It's when you kind of just realize one day that all of your socks have holes in them. And you decide that you'll go to a wholesale store and get one of those 24 packs of all the same sock. And you will take those and you'll do one big load of laundry and all of them will be the same sort of white with a little gray lettering on it or whatever. And you'll throw away all of your old socks at once and you'll replace them with the exact same but like entirely new set of socks. When in reality, maybe it would be better if you collected more interesting socks over time or like one at a time and you would trade them out as you go.
No, that's true. And that's why I love Bombas. They're an unlisted sponsor of the pod. I love my Bombas socks. It's outrageous. But no, that's true. If you're more like not making it a one moment thing that you save for later on, you can maybe be like, yeah, this one's worn down. Let me replace it with something a little bit more meaningful or fruitful or work that works better.
Right. And also, like, to take this metaphor past the metaphor stage to how this applies to this conversation, I think the main thing is, if you clean your slate and then replace everything all at once, I'm not certain that is also a reflection of a diverse set of thought. It's just a reflection of whatever you're feeling or thinking or interested in at that one moment in time. And I guess, Joey, in terms of like doing this right and trying to clean one's digital house effectively, what are the ways to do that without it being like just a single time button moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is sort of there are probably platforms that make it easier to do it than not, right? Like I just checked and I follow 295 people on Twitter. So it is like a list that is, I guess, kind of long, but not really that long. Yeah. I mean, I think in the sort of broader number of people that a lot of people follow, sometimes it's in like the thousands, and I'm like, this is insane. And so that list seems manageable for me to go in and kind of take a look at it and reevaluate. But I think the question becomes, what does it mean to you?
Yep.
Right? Like when we're evaluating, the reason I even brought up this MIT article is because I think it's interesting in that like there's a clear value demonstrated in this article of saying, you know, a group of scientists looked at this objectively, and the people that went through this exercise had some sort of benefit from it. You know, I went through and was like, why am I clicking on Instagram? I don't actually like get anything out of this. It is totally like an addictive, like neurotic behavior where I'm just hitting. And so at one point I deleted it, but then I felt like I was being rude occasionally if someone like mentioned me that was like a close friend that they use that platform or something like that, and I didn't respond. So I buried the app in my phone. So I still have it, but I can't easily just like see it, click it, and then be like, how did I get here and where did those last 15 minutes go?
Yes.
And so like going through that list of things, maybe, you know, Instagram, I don't know of any studies, maybe some studies exist of the benefit, but like the Twitter thing is like really simple and clear from this. And especially for people in sort of the line of work that we do as strategists or thinkers, or who are in sort of creative industry where they're being asked to generate new ideas, new frameworks, new models for thinking, being exposed to a diversity of thought is valuable. And I'm not talking like, I don't go onto Twitter and you know, like a lot of the queer voices that I follow are queer comedians like Julio Torres or Jabuki Young White or you know, like they say funny things and occasionally they say serious things or whatever it is. But you sort of get exposure to a mental model, and then you can take that mental model with you when you're evaluating a question that is sort of relevant to queer people, you know, in an idea that you're generating, or, you know, people of, you know, different geographic origins or whatever it is. Like it just becomes this thing you can take away from you and a bit of an algorithm for a variety of thinking. And I feel like it's worth it.
You know, it's interesting because half of it has to do with cleaning the house. The other half has to do with building a more diverse house, or like creating that digital house that has that.
Broaden your mind.
Broaden your mind.
Expand your horizons.
Yeah.
Invite a community.
Build your mind vineyard.
I'd like to have many grapes of the mind variety. I'm sorry for what I just did to your ears.
Wait. Everyone listening to the show right now, show of hands. Who wants to come to a mind wine night hosted by Critical Nonsense?
Oh,
mind wine night?
Mind wine.
Did this just come to you right now, or have you been harboring this?
Just now, but isn't that a great idea?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, we'll think on it.
Yeah. Mind wine meetup in 2020.
That's all.
Bye.
I love you. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain Labs production.
Recorded in MacGyver Studios in New York, New York.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and wine vinter Jess Vander.
Thanks to you.
Also like to thank sound engineer and all-around badass Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank designer Nora Mestrich for our beautiful cover art and for dealing with Stephen Ebert.
Oh, amen.
Love you, Steven.
We also like to thank the production crew who are our last action heroes, Sarah Gilbert, Les Jacobs, and Tony Vaughn.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Yeah. Who did I say I was going to special?
I would like to thank Hitch for being an incredible movie, and Will Smith for your performance and nonsensical monologues that, in so being nonsensical, were delightful.
Those monologues are fucking trash.
Oh, this is a G-rated podcast. No, it's not, and not anymore.
No. I'd like
Really
to thank
never.
Kevin James for not making anything recently. Thanks.
Wow.
Sing! Getting in hard.
Truly, though, who watched Paul Blart Mall
I did.
Cop?
You definitely did.
You
You watched
of
the
course
sequel,
watched
too.
it.
I
You probably
didn't
went to
watch
see
the
the
sequel.
Okay, good.
People
Yeah.
said, and by people, I mean people whose movie taste I don't trust, said the second movie was actually quote unquote pretty funny, which I cannot believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
His first stand-up special was pretty amazing. I was thinking about
That's
it
true, it
last
was.
night, and I think I watched his, or at least part of his more recent, like, return to the stage stand-up, and I think the difference was he was the butt of most of the jokes in the first one, and in the second one, he was just, like, more picking on people, and on top of just being like older, whatever, he was more powerful, more successful, had more money, and like no one wants to see the big person pick on the little guy.
Yeah.
You know,
In the spirit of...
he's like, you stupid gluten intolerant people with your health problem.
Oh, no.
He was
Oh,
like
no.
attacking food
Okay, well,
allergies.
who do we want to thank then? Instead,
I'll
maybe
fight
I'll
'em.
thank the people with food allergies because it's not your fault
That's true.
most
Yeah,
of the
it's
time.
not.
You've already won. I don't know why Alanis Morissette just had to come out then. Eddie
She
Murphy.
has a new song.
She does?
She has a new album. I heard it on the radio when I was in New Hampshire.
And I know where the next hour and a half is
It was
going.
called like "This Is Why I Drink" or something like that.
God, Alanis, I love you. Okay, I'll also thank Alanis Morissette, but I want to thank Eddie Murphy. I got sucked into the whole like him returning to SNL and
Yeah.
going back to watch his old, all of his old movies.
Delirious is on Netflix right now.
It is. I don't want to thank Delirious. It's got some mistakes. But thanks, Eddie, for like 40 years of amazing contributions to comedy that we even now don't fully appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I also want to thank Angelina Jolie. I'm sorry.
I want
Do
to
not
thank
apologize.
I want to thank all the people who make podcasts and things like that I listen to.
Oh my God,
That
yeah.
when they're gone over the holiday break, I'm like, what do I do? Like the sort of disappearance for 2 weeks of a lot of things that I take for granted because they're free, but I, deeply enjoy them. And this is not like a self pat on the back. This is like genuinely like there were things that were missing from my life for 2 weeks because there was nothing new coming through, and I was like, where do I go? Where do my ear holes find my sight balls?
Where do they find them? To that end, I'd like to thank Willem Belli and Alaska Thunderfuck for doing.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry, they're drag
Sorry, my
queens.
bronchitis laughter into the microphone was probably terrible.
Their podcast, Race Chasers, which recaps every episode of RuPaul's Drag Race
Oh,
from
that
the
sounds
beginning.
great.
It is awesome.
Alaska
I really need to get
Thunderfuck
into
is
that.
just a fucking tremendous name.
Oh, absolutely. And she's an amazing queen. She won All Stars, and she's worth it.
Wow. Yes.
And she has the range.
And she has the range, 100%. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck in your cleaning your house, Marie Kondo.
Yeah.
We're fighting on the streets.
Do it.
I mean, peace.
Yeah. After yesterday, let's say a little prayer for peace forever and ever.
You stay in my hood, hood, your
Peace.
The football player.
Brett Midler, the
Or
middle linebacker.
No, the great baker, Brad Midler. No. The stuffing inside of a cannoli. Bread Midler. That wasn't good.
So bad.
There's
a sandwich.
There's an easy
Could have
break in
easily
there.
been a sandwich.
It really could have. Shit. Oh, shit.
The periodic table, lead Midler.
Yes.